Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to others. I am a little surprised. I thought I would be the last person to speak on this panel, and given the fact that I happen to be the youngest person here, moreover, all right. Unlike other distinguished people who are here, Salman Sahab, and Mr. Saha, and Adib Sahab, Saida Appa, and I personally do not have any association with Aligarh in that sense of the term, either through family or through education. My association with Aligarh was a purely professional one. I had visited a couple of times to deliver lectures at different departments, and my experiences have always been very pleasant. I congratulate the author of this book, my friend Muhammad Waziuddin, for writing this book and publishing it at a time when we all need that there's need for further discussions on this particular issue and particular institutions. The title is The Making of the Modern Indian Muslim, Aligarh Muslim University. At some point of Indian history, perhaps the word modern would have received far more attention. Today, my sense is that the word Indian requires a lot more attention. There is a very famous Arabic proverb which says, if you know the truth, speak it. It is much better you speak about palm trees. So I am glad that the speakers on this podium are not talking about palm trees. They are speaking from their heart and mind, and I expect the others who would follow me would do so. The question is that in our country, when it comes down to a Muslim question or Muslim issues, there are a lot more people who are talking about palm trees, not about what directly concerns them or how their identities is affected. This book that the author has written, I'd make a few comments. Like all books, is neither perfect nor complete. But there are two primary purposes that every book must serve, which is that when you read it, you must learn few things, and then the book should provoke you to think about it further, read further. On both counts, I think the author has done his job quite well, and therefore it deserves to be read by all of you, and I strongly recommend that. Clearly, there are areas which require further attention, and I'm hopeful that he would do so, as Salman Sahab said in the subsequent edition. The most significant part of Aligarh Muslim University is that one can think about writing a book which directly concerns about the life of a community, as is the case with respect to Muslim community here. I wonder whether there is any other university in this country where you could talk about a university and identity in a manner that is being discussed in this particular book or with regard to Aligarh Muslim University. For sake of a thought experiment, if I suggest, can you write a book like The Making of Hindu Identity in Banaras Hindu University? You may, but it may not have the amount of substance that one could get from the history and the culture and every other implications and components that you come across in the history of Aligarh. Or you can pick any other university and think about it. Today, the two particular chapters in this book I found particularly very useful. The one that deals with Tablighi question, and there is another chapter which deals with the making of whether it is a bastion of liberalism or conservatism. These two particular chapters says specific insights, very valuable insights, in a manner that Muslim identity is debated, in a manner that the uh, this institution is discussed. I would like to briefly mention about a particular paragraph because the author, being a journalist, has used a very journalistic method in order to bring out certain facts. He is heavily dependent on interviews with many policymakers, vice chancellors, and other people who are associated with Aligarh to share his own thoughts, their interpretations in building this narrative. He has, of course, engaged with some books which are very important, but has not exhausted in the way that an academic would like to exhaust in building such a narrative. In that sense, in our time, probably it's also very helpful because there are a lot more people who would like to read such a popular narrative about incidents and anecdotes and facts concerning this particular institution. I would just try to read out a specific paragraph, and then after that I would conclude. In page 178 and 79, he talks about Samsad market. While I was reading about it, someone who has studied in Delhi University, I don't see that there is a parallel to that. Or in JNU you have Ganga Dhaba, or in Delhi University we have Kamla Nagar, where we usually hang out as students. And this is what he talks about, having interviewed somebody with regard to Samsad market. The Samsad market represents the pulse of the market. When he says Aligarh, the person with whom he was having conversation, it is perhaps the only place near the university where so many educated or those pretending to be educated spend countless hours at ramshackle tea houses, accompanied by snacks like crunchy namak pada and sweets like barfi, often served at tables amidst swarms of flies in the day and the mosquitoes in the evenings. The sugary tea served here is sipped over endless conversations. The conversations here feature everything from Imran Khan to Joe Biden, from Modi to models like Malaika Arora. This is the adda for wannabe poets and fledgling writers too. They read out and recite their passionate poems and stories, receive applause, wah wah from friends. So in that sense, he has tried to kind of provide some sort of a complete portrait of the university. Of course, there are discussions about many pleasant and unpleasant incidents and his own versions of it. Let me just conclude. We live in a time, as I said, this whole question of Muslim identity has increasingly becoming contentious. As you must have heard very recently, someone from Banaras Ghat said, if there is a Aurangzeb, is Shivaji going to rise? I always say Muslim identity is debated so furiously and so fiercely precisely because it's a very historical identity. There is a very dense connection with its history. You may think you are just a citizen, but there is somebody who is going to see an Aurangzeb in you. There is somebody who is going to see a Tipu Sultan in you. There is somebody who would see a Pakistan in you. And that is how it is. And it's very important to understand what your history is in order to negotiate the present situation. And it is very important to ask this question, whether Aligarh or my university Jamia, which could not have probably come into existence without Aligarh, whether student community or intellectuals or faculties who are associated with it are prepared to face that particular situation. It is true that if there is an Aurangzeb, Shivaji would rise. It's also important to ask whether Shivaji was prepared to save Darasiko. Who would save Darasiko? When we are present in this particular house called Constitution Club, we could probably ask that if there are caste atrocities, an Ambedkar would also rise. If there are false gods, a Periyar would also rise. If there is a Savarkar, a new Savarkar, obviously there would be a new Gandhi who would rise. So if there is a politician to perpetuate his power, is going to push people on war path, make them bloodthirsty, I'm sure there are people who would rise. And that's what, because in the end it's the humanity that survives against all forms of violence or genocides or politics that leads to that kind of division. So with these words, I congratulate the author and I look forward to the comments and remarks by other distinguished speakers.